Welcome, everyone. It is Friday, July 25th. Ooh,
Yay!
we have a special guest today. We have a very special guest today. Welcome, Adriana. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Marino and Kat.
Yeah, I heard, I guess just before we went on, we are so lucky to have you today, right before big travel. So
Yes.
Thank you for making the time in the middle of all the stress.
My pleasure. Yes, flying to Portugal tonight for vacation.
Oh,
I'm
That is
stoked.
so fun. I'm so jealous.
I
Super
hope
jealous
you
right now.
I hope you disconnect as much as you
Oh,
can, but also you need to leak a few pictures of.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I stay away from Slack and email and all that stuff because vacation is vacation.
Sacred.
Love it. Quick shout outs to Mort. Thanks for coming by. Sedan, thanks for hanging out with us. Adriana, when was the last time you went to Portugal?
Last year, I was there for KCD Porto. I gave the keynote there. So
That's so awesome.
Yeah. And this time we're going to Lisbon, and then we're going to spend a few days in the south as well. And I'm originally from Brazil, but I speak Portuguese. So I speak Portuguese, and I have some family in Portugal. So it'll be cool to speak Portuguese natively, because I always find it gets rusty if you don't use it, right?
Is the dialect different between Brazil and when you're in Portugal, or is it basically the same?
There are some nuances. There are some words that make us Brazilians chuckle when we're in Portugal, and the accent is different. I mean, there are regional accents like both in Brazil and Portugal, but you can tell. I think the Brazilian Portuguese is much more of a chill drawl compared to the European Portuguese. So European Portuguese feels like more closed-mouthed, and Brazilian Portuguese was like more open-mouthed. It's almost like comparing like English in North America to like English in Britain, I guess.
I love that. That is so cool. I haven't heard that before.
That's interesting. I haven't been to Brazil myself. I'd love to go one day. I don't know when that'll happen, but we'll figure it out. And by the way, for the folks wondering where the heck is Ned, Ned's on vacation, and we totally still needed to have a live stream, and he needed a little bit of a break. He's been doing so much, and he's got courses that he's published, and I think he's with family. So he's coming back today, but I didn't think he'd be, he'd have the juice to do a stream with us. But I think we should definitely have you back again, Adriana, so that you can be on a stream with Ned at the same time.
Woo!
Because he tends to go into some really interesting topics and areas as well. But, we've got an agenda that we've got to cover today. And I think we should start off by talking a little bit about that AI panel we did at the Intuit office, probably, I don't know, a month ago at the end of June, like you said.
June, yeah.
So you were the moderator. Why don't you tell us what we did and how that went?
Oh, so we were at the Intuit office as part of Toronto Developer Week, which I'm a bad Torontonian. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but here we are.
It was the first time. It was actually the first one. So from what I heard.
Oh, okay, that explains it. Okay, that was super cool. Extra super cool then.
Yeah. So I'm glad we were a part of that overall experience. There were a lot of events going on throughout the entire week.
There were.
But Intuit has an office right by the Well in Toronto, and the Well is actually fairly new. I think it's only been around for like a year or 2 years or something.
Yeah, that was my first time at the Well, and then like I heard about it because my daughter has gone shopping there a couple of times, and I went to the building, like straight to the building for the event, and I'm like, but where's the shopping? Apparently it was just a little bit south of where the building entrance was, so that was kind of interesting. But it was a super cool location. It was very well attended. Lots of people showed up, and they had a very generous space in their, like, I don't know, cafeteria area there. So it was pretty full, and the conversation was I think we even went a little bit over with our conversation, but people were very engaged in the panel.
Yeah. So, I mean, I enjoyed the panel too because I'm not an AI expert by any means. It's just a lot of the things we're doing with AI, Gen AI, seem to bring up a lot of the enterprise problems that we've been dealing with for years, for decades, if you will. But what were some of the questions that we discussed? Do you remember? I can't remember. I have a terrible memory, by
I
the way.
pulled up the panel questions because I couldn't remember at the time. There were some. There was a question about really the kind of the influx or overwhelm of PRs that are made by AI. And so that was like clogging things up. So we had some discussions around that, which was quite interesting. And then another one that was memorable, I think, was the idea of brain fart. The idea of like losing one's skill set, I guess, to AI as well. Because and that's something that I fear that could happen if we're not careful. And I always reference the Foundation series. And for folks who haven't read the book or watched the show, which is kind of adjacent to the books, it's the idea that this like huge galactic empire is crumbling because knowledge is being lost. So they have like all this technology and infrastructure, and it's been humming along so nicely. And they have fewer and fewer people managing this stuff who know how to manage it. And so now this like glorious empire is basically falling into disrepair because you don't have the people with the right knowledge to maintain systems. And I feel like that can, I feel like, this book was written, I think, in the 50s. The series was written in the 50s. And I feel like it applies so much to what could potentially happen here in the here and now, where, we rely on AI for coding, which is awesome. But then does that mean that people, especially juniors, can get lazy about coding and not learn certain important coding principles because they're trusting in AI to do that? And I think that's something we have to be cautious about.
Can I jump in on that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of the things that I keep seeing happen with the adoption of AI in the industry is all kinds of people, from individual contributors all the way up to the executives. They think that, well, if AI displaces their labor, they can lay that labor off.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole like scope of reasons why that is an absurd way to adopt technology. Number one, just the liability. Like, if you're pushing out AI stuff, which maybe is a good idea, I'm not gonna like jump into that. There's a lot to argue just on whether or not to do that. But if you are shipping AI stuff, at some point, every draft that is shipped by AI should probably not draft PR should probably not be moved out of draft by a robot, right? Like, there's an amount of onus there. So, okay, now I'm ready to actually let this start going through. Pairing humans and AI makes a lot of sense. It's a lot like having a paragraph writer instead of a typewriter, where you're doing just one letter at a time. Or they have like chart recorders and other weird, neat ways to type entire words at a time instead of individual letters. And now we have this interface that lets us imagine in paragraphs at a time. There's a lot of slop there because it reflects back on us what we're training it on. So realistically, if we're complaining about AI slop, we're actually complaining about human slop. And I think that's going to be a neat evolution semantically for Earth, just because we get to step back and say, what is worth writing down? And I think there's a lot to look at with, okay. So if a junior dev wants to learn programming, should they learn syntax first and then structure of the program? Because that's how a lot of us get there now. First, we have to learn just how to write words, more or less, in programming languages, how to construct those into sentences, and then how to correctly construct those into entire programs. And then we've just achieved our very first iteration of how to write a program. But there might be 20 different ways to write a simple Hello World program if you want it to be a little bit interactive. Do you make it modular? Do you add a bunch of different arguments or make it infer things? Like, there's a lot you can do with that little bit of logic. But there's such a barrier between learning how to pick up a computer, make it productive for development, and learn how to write programs and achieve that developer output. Like, that's a really, really big journey. And one of the things that LLMs make easier is constructing a program, what you want to put in and what you want to get out, as the first barrier to entry. And then from that superficial layer, you can dive deeper. You can say, okay, well, what do these code blocks actually do? Or why am I seeing the same code over and over and over? Even just from the perspective of a relatively untrained developer who is looking at AI-generated code and seeing something done over and over and over again, that can be their first lead to, oh, maybe this is bad code. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to reimagine how we learn and do things as people based on AI. And like the whole concept of a company trying to achieve the same goals with AI ends up being bizarre, because now they can free up that labor to outcompete their competition, outperform, hypothetically. The scope of limited imagination is a little heavy right now.
So you both are touching on something very interesting, a pattern that we've seen. If anyone remembers, how to burn a CD or a copy of VHS tape, right?
Yes. Sadly.
So if you took a VHS tape and then you duplicated it, and then you took that copy and duplicated that copy, and you kept doing this in an infinite manner, the end result would be nothing like the original. The quality would be way off. You'd actually probably lose a lot of content. And same with CDs, right? You take a copy of the CD, you copy that. And that's what AI slop has become.
Mm-hmm.
Effectively, AI is learning a lot of what we've given it, but then we're reusing that. And then it's just learning from that. And it's just becoming a very repeatable process where, Mark, what is a VHS? Come on.
Troll.
Hey, Akansha. So I also want to get to Siddhan's question, but the reality is, unless there's good auditing practices against what an AI has learned, a model has learned, and we've actually improved upon it and modified it to be a lot more accurate, individuals that are vibe coding and not having that development background, haven't learned like algorithms, haven't learned about data structures, haven't learned how to do a bubble sort properly by hand. They're just going to build a bunch of things that lack governance, that lack the right amount of security, that leaks memory. And it's probably not even going to be sensical, because the output of that code might not be anywhere near what they expect it to be, except a lot of them might not even care when they're vibe coding. Now, take the both of you. You've done a lot of development in your, actually Kat is actively developing these days, but you've done a lot of development over your careers and you know what to look out for, whereas new programmers, juniors, don't. And so immediately jumping right into it, sure, you might be able to come up with an application that does something, but when you try to enterpriseify it, or if you're trying to really monetize it, and then you have to wrap around all the PCI, all that governance, whatever it is, it's just going to blow up in their faces, is how I'm seeing this.
What if we commodify all of that, like initial legwork and turn it into something you can pull off the shelf and run with, just to give people that boost in quality right off the bat.
How would we do that? Just curious.
I mean, so there's things already out there that begin to lower the barrier to entry to think simple stuff like linting, OmniLint or whatever. It might not be the most fine-tuned example out there, but if you take a fairly polyglot approach and give a highly opinionated framework and then say, okay, here is all the tooling that a best-in-class developer is going to use for this general type of programming, maybe across a Python, Go, and TypeScript. Maybe throw Rust in there too, because it's actually a neat language to play with LLMs. But like a lot of the linting and the formatting tools and stuff like that can already be packaged as a template repo and then rubber stamped around as the beginning of projects. And one of the neat things about taking that approach is LLMs, when they see higher quality code, they write higher quality code. It doesn't mean that there's no entry point for AI slop, but generally speaking, if it's picking up high quality code, it's already in the context, the level of output that it's aiming to hit. And LLMs respond really well to linting errors, especially if you hook them into a pre-commit. So it's like, okay, you can commit all you want, but you're never going to get anything committed that doesn't pass all of your linting checks.
That's definitely interesting. That's definitely
it's a space to play in still. Like,
yeah.
I don't think we've imagined our way to good outcomes yet, just because we're at the very beginning. We're basically drawing the stick figures of AI powered systems. And eventually we will refine the art and have practice with the patterns, kind of like Kubernetes. At the very beginning of Kubernetes, it was very difficult to take to production in a meaningful way. And now we have an entire practice that is at least informed a lot of the common do's and don'ts in general patterns and things like that. And we haven't even achieved that with AI yet, how to operationalize something that's less deterministic, for example. So
I think there's definitely a lot of really great potential. And I think, putting guardrails, especially for developers, is super important, because especially when you're learning something new, you tend to go off the rails. and the tendency is, I just want it to work, which is super fine. But then how do we ensure that they have the desire to refine it to make it better? And I think I never want to take that desire away from junior developers to like find ways to like refine and improve their code and question why things work. I think that's the one thing that I fear that vibe coding can potentially take away from more junior folks. But I absolutely love the idea. Like, for example, I run away from front end stuff like the plague. It scares me after I dabbled in HTML and CSS back in the olden days. And I love the idea. And so like I have my own domain, but I have nothing on it. It's just like sitting there idly for, 20 years. But I love the idea that I can now, if I wanted to, like, hit up some AI that could like generate me the front end code to like build me a pretty website, and I don't have to stress out about it. But I also feel like I have like that experience, that developer experience behind me that can also like call bullshit on what it generates. And I want people to stay curious and be able to still call bullshit on what the AI generates.
I like that. I also have an absolutely paralyzing fear of front-end work. And I have a laundry list of domains because domains and shoes cost about the same. Anyway, and I don't have a lot on my domains. I've tried building, like taking Hugo templates or Jekyll templates, or going with other like Docusaurus and like other things that are out there several times through the last 10 years. And I don't know what I want visually enough to actually know if I'm getting closer to the goal or not. I want a lot more hand holding when it comes to, okay, I want a pretty toggle. I don't know how to make a pretty toggle. I know structurally how I want the logic and the code to work, but the actual visuals, it's not something that's intrinsically motivational. So I sat down about 3 weeks ago and I created a gigantic style system. I more or less went through a bunch of prompts about the history of visual design and frameworks around visual design and all the accessibility details and like different types of contrast at different levels, how containerization works in a UI. And I'm like, there's too many containers in my ops world already. This is insane. But I learned a lot just going through all of that. And then the Claude Code, and I put together a gigantic omnibus index HTML that is a style guide with all of the interactive elements and like the toggles and things like that, and then sat there and iterated on it for a long time, just critiquing the hell out of it until it was actually full of code that is reasonable to go and reuse, to actually start building like some of my Braincraft and ContainerCraft website stuff that I finally feel maybe I can put something out there that's worth spending time, reading and interacting with.
That's
I
awesome.
definitely couldn't before.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm grateful for AI for giving us that ability for sure.
As much as all this capability exists today, I still don't feel like I have time to just go build something. I mean, I could probably create a picture and then feed it to ChatGPT and say, build this for me. But, after 5 p.m. rolls around, my brain just like flips to, all right, I'm done doing anything tech work related. My brain goes elsewhere. Sometimes I'll just go head downstairs and game a bit. And I think like if I'm during my day job, whatever it is, I will probably spend a couple of hours trying to improve a process or make things easier for me. But I'll never go to I'm not you, Kat. I'll never go to your extent of actually trying to build something long-term or meaningful, only because I don't know. There's people doing it already. And I feel like maybe there's a little bit of imposter syndrome hiding behind the scenes and thinking like, if I build this, someone else will come around and say, oh, I built it better, or I've already built this for you. And I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of a fear I have of my own. Like, I don't want to go out and build another Open Unison cough. I don't know if Mark's still watching. Maybe he is. But sometimes I think about, what if I took some of what he's already built and combined it with other solutions and effectively created something that solves a very maybe niche problem, if you will, that a lot of people don't think about, or a lot of people don't really care about if you think about that. But I don't really have the juice anymore. I've got a 4-year-old that just runs around and wants me to play dinosaurs with him as much as he gets
good.
home. He's like, yeah, here's my T-Rex. My Spinosaurus.
I love it.
It's not. Anyways, let's talk about something else. There was something around the sustainability and environment friendliness of AI consumption, and I think you have a lot to say about this, Adriana. Do you want to tell us your thoughts, what you've been thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with AI, I think that we easily forget about is that there are computers running the show, right? And so, and to be able for it to spit out, ChatGPT to spit out that 2-second message, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and the amount of compute power required for that, which translates to energy costs, is outrageous. So how do we, tap into all the goodies that AI can give us, which, there are so many benefits, but how do we do that and still be mindful of the environmental impact? Like, I was talking to my colleague Henrik the other day, and he was telling me he did some investigations where I think he determined that a single AI prompt response is the equivalent to power like an electric car for like 200 or 300 meters. Like, it's wild. That is a lot of energy, that goes into this. And, and given that we are seeing so much stuff going on with the environment, I mean, I think it's safe to say that we're probably all sitting in cities that are overly hot right now. Like Toronto is ridiculous. Like 40 Celsius, is not normal for summer here. And this is becoming the new normal. So, technology like AI is exacerbating the problem. How do we rein it in, use it for good, use it to our advantage, but not abuse it? Because, everyone and their uncle now is like AI, right? Every single technology company has latched onto it, which of course it's compete or become obsolete, but we also have to keep the environment in mind.
Oh, that CO2 generation.
Yep.
I totally feel that. But you know what? This brings up an interesting point. There are companies out there. I don't want to name names, but I'm sure that if you were in college, probably about 15 years ago, you might have used this social media system way back when it was starting to just get big. And now this company has grown into this behemoth that has focused on AI, has focused on a type of, I mean, if you use Instagram, you probably have encountered them too. And I've been reading a few articles where they're coming into different environments and different cities, building these massive data centers to process, I don't know, trillions upon trillions of transactions for AI, and causing challenges for the surrounding environment. And it's not just thinking about how much we're contributing or driving from a CO2 footprint or a carbon footprint, if you will, but it's also the impact it has on how people live. Like if any one of these big companies decided to open up shop somewhere close by to me, the amount of power draw, hydro, electricity, water that has to be drawn to support these. I think you're muted, Kat, if you were saying something.
Natural gas, they're powering these things in really bad ways, just in the race to be the first to market. I think I saw Google was celebrating they have scaled, and I think in the last year they've processed 940 trillion tokens. So what is that? A quadrillion tokens, basically. We went from less than, I think there was 150% increase. The 150%, I'm a little loose on. The 940 trillion is pretty solid as of recent information.
Wow. Okay.
Damn.
Yeah, and that's just one company. And that's just tokens. We're not talking about diffusion, which is a whole nother large service to try and offer.
How do we fix that?
Well, how do we measure the input and the long-term equitable output of anything that we're doing globally today? Because we're doing everything at scale. It's a joke in our industry how everything ends in at scale, because humans are not currently involved in doing very many things without attempting at scale. And that's inside and outside of technology. So what is the entire carbon footprint of a staff level 10x engineering San Francisco developer team, right? For a year. What is that footprint? And then also, what is the equivalent to achieve that output with AI? And you have to measure the entire team for all of that. And then more importantly, it's at the end of all of that input, which is a lot of carbon footprint as a side effect and all of that, what did we as an entire culture gain out of all of that expenditure of energy and fuel and environmental consumption? Because really what we need to care about is whether or not we created something worth keeping. A cost is worth pay if we're creating things that actually improve humans' lives in a way that does not require that expense all over again, where you're actually building equity. But if we are continuing to, at scale up this, how much can we consume to create an infinite ceiling of whether it's profit or line go uppy or of any kind, right? It's, are we actually producing value, or are we just producing another form of consumption? Because capital consumption is its own type of consumption. And I think if we actually step back and look at achieving those equitable outcomes, AI has a lot in favor of it if we also reduce our dependence on it for repeat successes in the same space.
I guess it's a matter of like, use it where it's useful, right?
Right.
Because I think a lot of companies have just been like, AI, we must incorporate AI in the same way that like blockchain was like, let's put it on the blockchain.
Right. Well, and it's not just use it where it's useful, but use it in a way where it's kind of like use AI to put itself out of a job. If your company just has not achieved high quality project implementation with really high quality CI and really high quality linting and formatting and really high quality security checking, all of these things, and now with the same staff, suddenly you can add that to your roadmap without fatiguing your developers, then that actually reduces the future failure rate of the humans and the AI. And then you're less reliant on AI for all of the support problems that you solved preventatively, or being able to actually implement that refactor on the timelines that your stakeholders can allow for. Like, you get to be more ambitious with how much you improve quality of life in the equity of that code, so that you don't have all of these other drivers that are going to lead to AI written emails for AI written support problems from AI observed logs, right? That's an entire class of problems that aren't going to require energy usage if you solve that problem up front, because the developer team now has the reach to accomplish that preventative goal.
And I do think also we can probably employ AI to help us even with environmental issues, in terms of like, AI is remarkably good at like doing number crunching, right? So it's great for analytics. So we can also employ it to help us solve some of our environmental problems, to like help us put some of our, I guess, crunch our numbers, put them into perspective for us, and help us kind of figure out where we can make some reductions.
You know, on that note, right, there's a lot of hardware we're building, developing to support a variety of models, right? And we want to be efficient with that. What about all the hardware, like the nuts that I have sitting in my basement that do absolutely nothing now? Like, I would love to just reuse them. And it just kind of brings me back to the previous stream that we did with the Nimble Edge folks. If you remember, Kat, they had built some models, or they fine-tuned a model to run on like very low power hardware. I mean, it's meant to be run on
single
phones.
bit quantization, I think. Yeah,
Exactly.
crazy stuff.
And if we can marry that what they've been doing to, my aging infrastructure so that we don't have to, buy stuff and then, use renewable resources, if you will, to consume this without having to recreate new hardware, new technologies. I think that partially addresses the problem, but it also reduces waste because guess what? These servers, these NUCs that I have, at some point, like, when I do decide to dispose of them, where are they going to go? They're not really going to go to a recycling plant. They're probably going to go to an electronics waste system or place, and I don't know what happens afterwards, right?
Yep.
And the idea is to be able to just reuse some of this stuff. Like, we've got some great hardwares. If you actually go to eBay or any website that sells leased gear, you'll find stuff that's about 3 years old, and maybe it might not be cutting edge, but it still enables you to run some models, do some cool things, solve some problems without having to go spend on the latest and greatest. We do this with phones. Like, every time a new iPhone comes out, how many people are out there buying the new iPhone? I mean, I wanted to buy the new iPhone when it came out, the iPhone 16, but I realized like my 14 is still pretty decent. It still does the job. And that's not to shame anyone that does it, right? It's just, I think we've been ingrained to go out and just chase after the new when we can just simply reuse what's already there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm probably going to upgrade when the 17 comes out because I've had this for too long. And I also like the fact that it's got a near camera. But having said that, specifically around the hardware aspect of what we're doing for AI, for LLMs, there's a lot of use and a lot of life left in a lot of the stuff that we have. And that's one way to just cut back on footprint, because now we don't have to spend cycles on developing in factories that just emit a lot of CO2, a lot of
That's
carbon.
true. Yeah, that's a cool perspective. I like that.
Anyways, so you've been doing some cool stuff with MCP and VS Code, and why don't you tell us what you've been up to?
So I thought it was high time I joined the AI bandwagon and edumacate myself. and honestly, I think my interest got piqued when I heard about MCP servers, and I'm like, okay, tell me more. So I found a couple of videos, and I'm not a visual learner. Like, I'm not a learner via video, I should say. I'm a learner via text, but I found a couple of good video resources that explained the concept for me. And I was like, oh, cool. And then at the same time, so I work at Dynatrace, I found out also Dynatrace had come out with its own MCP server. So I thought, okay, let's put this, fresh knowledge into some good use and try to play around with it. And so the use case I came up with was, can I use the Dynatrace MCP server to basically interact with Dynatrace using natural language? And for me, like, my use cases, I work in the observability open telemetry world. So I wanted to know, if I get open telemetry data into Dynatrace, can I use this MCP server to have natural language interaction with Dynatrace? Because Dynatrace has, because it supports like the three main open telemetry signals, traces, logs, metrics. And so it's a single data store for all of those signals and allows you to correlate those signals quite nicely. And it has a very, I would say, comprehensive querying language that allows you to interact with your data. But there is a learning curve. Like, I joined Dynatrace in November, and I'm still getting, wrapping my head around it. And I have some amazing teammates who have, been around Dynatrace for a while and have educated me and helped guide me on using the product. But, the nice thing about this MCP server is, because I can use natural language to interact with Dynatrace, so Dynatrace, the query language aptly named DQL, or Dynatrace query language. So the MCP server, when I give it I ask, like, hey, can you show me like the last 5 traces and their associated, the last few associated spans, and it will it'll spit out that information, but it'll also show me the DQL query that it ran behind the scenes. So I'm like, ooh, cheat sheet. Now I can learn behind the scenes. And so I can also like copy paste that into Dynatrace and run it myself as well. So it's a cool learning aid, and it's just a cool way to interact with the system without actually even necessarily looking at the system. Like obviously you have the option of logging into Dynatrace and looking, but it's cool to have that sort of conversational aspect, and where, you know, through a couple of sentences you've fed it a complex query and it goes away and does its magic.
So have you dug into what it can do with like tracing, with telemetry data, with OTel, even like MCP and OTel, if you will? Because one of the requirements that's coming up with a few of the end users I work with is, you know, how can we naturally speak to our tracing information,
Mm-hmm.
and better understand our flows, better understand our how our applications are performing, latency, all that stuff. Because no one wants to go submit a query to any one of these platforms. They just want to speak naturally.
Yeah,
So how
yeah.
can we do that today?
Yeah, and it's actually one of the questions that I asked is like, give me, you know, like give me a list of like the longest running span or actually the longest running trace in the system, and it'll come up with it. And then it's like, tell me more information, and it'll give that information, or you know, tell me you know, of all the services, like what's the average response time for all the services. And I was running the OpenTelemetry demo, so it's got like 18 services running, and it was like, it spat out the average response time for each of these services, which is really cool, right? Because then it's like, great, I don't have to figure that out. Thank you for figuring that out for me. And you know, it just took a few seconds to do. So for me, that was magical, and I'm actually super stoked about like, what else can I do with this? Because I feel like you know, it's great. I'm interacting with this one MCP server. Can I chain a bunch of things together now to do some cool stuff? I haven't figured out what it is, but I like to find cool ways to intersect, you know, make different technologies intersect, come up with like interesting use cases for, you know, can I chain different MCP servers, relate, you know, other data from other systems. What if we can bring in data from other observability vendors into like, because that's another interesting use case. A lot of folks tend to have you know, their traces in one system, their logs in another system, and their metrics in another system. Don't recommend it because you kind of lose out on the power of correlation. But now what if you like, okay, not the ideal situation, but now can you use different MCP servers to kind of gather data from these different systems and try to correlate them? Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
That would be ideal, especially when you're trying to reduce like your mean time to resolution. One of the biggest challenges I see, like with SREs having to comb through a lot of this data, is it takes time. Like, sure, you could take your log output and dump it right into a model, and it'll give you one bit of information. And then you could take your tracing information, throw it into another system. But you still need to spend time stitching it all together to get to that root cause. And when you're having an outage or you're on call, if you can speed that up substantially, you get to go back to bed very quickly.
Yeah.
Right. So, and this is the empathy side of it. Like, we have to think about how we can improve the lives of these engineers who are, yeah, they're on call, but they don't want to be woken up all the time. We don't want autopilot operations to go fix things, but we want to pinpoint something very quickly. And we still need that human in the loop to be able to make that decision on what needs to be changed. Now, if I were to use, let's say, Dynatrace's MCP server, what can it do for me today? What can I actually do with it? Because I actually have an end user using Dynatrace today, and they want to use the MCP server that's available, and they want to be able to just optimize their own operations. What are some things that we can do?
Yeah, so some of the things, like I said, you can get it to list all the services that are running. You can get it to, I've gotten it to like, hey, can you show me the last like 4 log messages associated to a given trace ID? Can you pull up information on a particular metric? What's the longest running, span right now for X service? And then even one thing that I was experimenting with yesterday was, that's cool. You've given me like the trace ID and the span ID. Show it to me in Dynatrace. Craft a URL for me, the Dynatrace URL that'll take me to like the distributed tracing app, and show me. And so I coaxed it to create the URL, and then I'm like, great, open it in the external browser for me, and bleep. Which is really cool.
I smell a blog post coming.
Oh, there's one on its way actually. on the Dynatrace blog. I'm in the process of getting it reviewed for publication. So including that use case. So that was actually pretty cool. And someone suggested it to me. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it could do that, couldn't it?
I'm actually really curious about that a little bit. Because I hadn't given it brain cycles, but we have programmatic dashboards, just to see the metrics across all of our observability coverage and see when things are spiking and such. And we have things like, PagerDuty or whatnot to trigger off of that to get a human for analysis. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, especially in the case of like Marino saying someone who's on call, if the alert triggers the PagerDuty, but it also has the Dynatrace MCP server, has the GitHub MCP server, and can understand what app is failing, what repo is responsible for that particular failure, find the recent commit logs, assuming we're practicing good commit hygiene, which I have only started doing since having Copilot write my commit messages based on git diff for me. It's been a life changer. I can actually use git log now. And then present not just an alert, a failure alert, but the full context of this is the code change, this is the effect observed in production, and this is the anomaly we're seeing. But it can also go and look at the other Dynatrace stuff and say, I wonder if there are any other related symptoms or any other indicators that might not be hitting alerts but are still anomalous and could be worth looking at, so that when someone is on call and getting an alert, they're going into it with a lot of context right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And it's not the AI changing anything or being responsible for fixing it. It's just actually getting that context and awareness that would normally take a human a considerable amount of time, especially if it's context switching.
Yeah. And I think, we were talking about like, what are the good uses of AI? I think this is a great use of AI. Isn't it lovely that we have now something that can kind of sift through the data and point us in the right direction, and nudge us and save us so much time, right? When it comes to troubleshooting. And I think another thing that's important, and it's funny because I feel like it's this age-old problem in IT. It's all about integration, right? It's all about chaining things together. So now we've got this lovely technology. We've got our MCP servers. How do we chain all this stuff together into a useful workflow? It really, I feel like tech really is like one giant workflow problem. And so now the new question is, what does the AI workflow look like for us? What does it look like in observability? What does it look like in software development? So we've got like these different workflows that we can play with and explore.
That is so cool. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like literally all my calendar things went off at the same time because of a meeting. Just as I come off mute, right?
Of course.
Anyways, so there's a lot we can dive into, but with the last few minutes that we have, where can people find you? How can people get in touch with you and see some of your amazing content, blog posts, some of the videos that you've even developed with many of the other fantastic community members we've been working with over the years?
Oh yeah, so I'm on Blue Sky. I don't know how well you can see my Blue Sky handle on here, but it's my it's
See if I can switch this.
Oh.
There we go. Okay.
There you go. Yes, that is my Blue Sky handle. You can also find me on Mastodon. It's the same thing, but without the .bsky.social. I'm on Hachyderm. And then on LinkedIn, I post a lot on LinkedIn. I have a blog on Medium. It's adri-v.medium.com. So adri-v.medium.com. And yeah, I have the same handle on Instagram. And I have a podcast, Geeking Out, which Marino has been on, and I would love for Kat to be on. Yeah, I just the podcast is really about elevating awesome humans in tech and talking about their tech origin stories and cool stuff that is near and dear to their hearts. So the podcast is called Geeking Out with Adriana Villela, because there's like a bunch of Geeking Outs. So you just look for it with my name on it, so that it can be more easily searchable. So we have a YouTube channel. We're on like Spotify, Apple Music. I am mostly a one-woman show on the podcast. I get a little bit of help from my daughter with the editing here and there. But yes, I do all the things on the podcast.
Fantastic. Hint, hint, Kat, you need to be on that podcast.
Yes, that's right.
Sounds like fun.
Yay.
All right. Well, Adriana, have a fantastic trip to Portugal. Take lots of pictures. Tell us how much amazing food you ate and what you've seen.
All the fish.
And we want to wish everyone a great weekend. Thank you all for coming by and hanging out with us. We will see you soon. I don't know if we'll have one next week. I kind of like the cadence of doing it every couple of weeks, because we've got so much going on, honestly, with our day jobs, that it becomes a little challenging to try and get us all together. But every 2 weeks, maybe every 3 weeks, maybe every month. I don't know. Anyways, have a great weekend, y'all. Thanks for coming by. We'll see you soon.
Bye.